Continue. All right. All right. So welcome to tonight's class. I've just started the recording. Everyone should see that we're recording right now, and I'm sharing. The introductory portion of tonight's class is just making this little house with some offsets, some doors, windows, couple interior walls. Pretty basic, but it just kind of culminates what we've done so far in the first 5 weeks ish. Didn't touch too much on text on that, but we kind of nailed that down last week, right? So, are there any questions on how we created this? I'm just going to quickly go through how I would create this. If I was given this assignment, so I would take, that looks about right. Let me close this command line. I think you can see everything. Perfect. So I would have started with a polyline, which would have allowed me to draw this exterior wall as a whole. And then I offset it by 6 inches inside to give me that wall thickness. From there, I went ahead and placed my windows and my doors based on, this 4-foot dimension and the 4-foot window length. Doors, I did the same thing as far as placing this initial line, and then I utilized my copy command to copy that 2 inches. So typically I use copy when I'm doing one item. I use offset if it's 2 or more. Okay, so I offset this wall because I had 2 walls, right? But I just copied that line over. There was no really reason for me to go through the offset process necessarily for one line. Okay. I then drew my circle based on this center point and the size of the door, and then trimmed out any of the excess door swing that was not right here. Made sure that my thicknesses were a little different size interior door, and that pretty much covers it. Anything I missed?
Wait, what was the length of the door?
Which one?
Both.
So the length is always going to be the same as the width, right? So that dimension's given right here. I'm not going to measure that door because that door is going to swing into that opening, right?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah. So typically that's how you see doors measured, is by the opening, assuming that that's the door length, right? The width is the same as the length. The door width, technically, this is the door opening. The door width is 2'6", and then the thickness would be that 1.5 or the 2 inches. The height of it will be what we talk about in the second half of the class tonight. Any questions on this? So let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and we'll do an hour of new instruction tonight from 6:50 to 7:50. We're going to be looking at elevations. And we'll be going over what that is and how to draw them and some cool stuff. So if you haven't finished this up, please go ahead and finish it. Prior to turning it in, let's turn in a screenshot with this complete. But I'd like to submit 2 screenshots for tonight, or 1 screenshot with both of them in it. Okay. We can do the next part of the assignment just right up here. And actually, I'd like to do that. Okay. And you'll see why in just a second. All right, so come back at 6:50, 6:51. We'll give it 5 minutes. I guess it is. It looked like it was smaller. So like this type of stuff, so that 4 inch, I would like, a lot of times I'm drawing this with minor dimensions like that one, going smaller, right? Like 2 inch or 4 inch dimensions, just, when you look at it, even if you don't trust it, not. That's what I thought from that first, but doesn't matter. Looks good. That's, I would call this. Yeah. So don't bring it into the wall. So that's what's you wouldn't put that 6 in there just right. So. All right, we'll give it 2 more minutes and then we'll start with our elevation views.
How many of these dimensions did you want in here?
All of them.
Okay, just checking.
Enough for me to know that, I mean, I think you could probably get rid of like that one right there. And maybe this one right here. But those are probably the only 2 dimensions that you can get rid of and still know where everything exists.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and start this up again. What we're going to be looking at is elevation views and how to create them and using what's called a story pole. Does anyone know what a story pole is in construction? And this
I
is
do.
you do. Tell me about it, Addison. What's a story pole?
Well, it's James, but
Oh, sorry. Addison's name was highlighted yellow. So sorry, James. Go ahead, James. What
a
is your
story
story pole?
pole is one end of the transit as opposed to the other. So you've got your excavator running his machine, you've got your man operating the transit, and what he's doing is he's shooting your elevations from a set point to where the excavation is taking place.
Correct.
The story pole is what records the height between where you're at and where you need to be.
Absolutely. Thank you, James. And that's a great explanation. So that's utilized in the field, right, for actual excavating. We can utilize story poles in our 2D modeling as well. Little different, but the concept and theory is the same. Ultimately, what a story pole is it's going to give you a known height that you can transfer across your drawing. Okay. So what I want to do right now is go ahead and take this entire drawing. I want you to, let's see, do we want to do this? I kind of want to copy it. So let's go ahead and copy this. And we're going to make a second set. So just COPY. That might just, oh, here, let me get my command window back up. So take this whole thing. I'm going to copy it from a displacement. I'm just going to pick the bottom left and I'm just going to drag it straight to the right. And what I want to do is I actually want to drag this to the right. I don't know. Close to 50 feet, 100 feet. Let's see how far this is. I don't know, 70 feet away, something like that. What we're going to do is we're going to have a left-hand side drawing for an elevation coming off this one to the right. Okay, so we wanted to make a little room. The next thing I want to do is I want you to go through here and we're just gonna clean this up. So on the one to the right, let's go ahead and just take all of your dimensions and delete them, okay? And you can do that by holding control, or just clicking one, clicking the next one. You don't have to hold control. You can select them all by clicking on them one at a time and then deleting them. I wouldn't use the select similar command because it's going to select the other ones over here as well in your original. But we just want to get a nice clean floor plan to work from. I'm 70 feet roughly, 70, 80, 100. I don't care. Just enough to give us some room. We're not going to need a ton of room, but we need something. You should have something. Oh, I guess I deleted the door. Hold up. I got rid of that door right there. Let's bring that back. So we should still have 2 doors, 3 windows, a string of exterior walls, and then 2 interior walls, right? And there's probably better ways to do this, but it's good practice just selecting things. All right. So we should have something that looks like this. So I'm going to go ahead now and change my layer over to the construction layer that I worked on last 2 weeks ago, I think. If you don't have one, let's go ahead and make a construction layer real quick by clicking the layer properties, clicking this new layer button, name it construction, and then let's make it yellow in color. Okay. If you don't have one, if you do, let's go ahead and just open that up and you can double click that to make it current. You can click this drop down and click that to make it current. Doesn't matter, but we want to be on the construction layer. All right. So what we want to do now is I'm going to draw some lines and we're just giving ourselves a little bit of working room. Okay. I don't like to work right on top of my other drawings. It makes it really hard if you need to do a full selection of something and move it or copy it if you're trying to pick out lines that are intersecting. Okay. So what I like to do typically when I make my elevations is I like to give 5 feet of separation between the wall and the elevation I'm going to make. Okay. So I'm going to type in line. I'm going to come here and draw a line straight up 5 feet. And I'm going to draw a line to my left, roughly 5 feet as well. Okay. So you should have this little reverse L shape on the top. So what this is going to do is this is going to set our baseline for our wall. Okay. So let's go back to our exterior wall layer. And I want to draw, now this, we could draw a polyline, right? The thing is, I'm not going to be offsetting it necessarily. So there's not necessarily a real big advantage to drawing a polyline versus a normal line, because a normal line, we can just do this, right? We can click here, right? You can go around and click more lines. So either one you use, I don't care, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line and we're going to make it nice and simple and say our walls, and let's just assume this for everything. Our walls are 10 feet high, okay? Make it nice and simple. So we're going to draw this wall 20 feet over, right? Because that's how wide our wall is based on the floor plan. And we're going to draw that wall 10 feet high. I'm going to come back the other way, draw 20 feet to the left, and then come back down and finish my elevation. Okay. So what we're going to be looking at when all said and done is what's called a butterfly drawing. Okay. Has anyone heard of a butterfly drawing before? Knows what that is?
Oh, you're gonna go 3 dimensions, aren't you?
You are going to go 3 dimensions.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
So what a butterfly is a butterfly is a drawing that essentially we're looking at that floor plan from straight down. Now all those walls are gonna fold out, just like it was a box, okay? If we had a box that's 5-sided with an open lid, fold
Mhm.
all those 4 walls out, and that's gonna be how we draw our elevations, okay?
Okay.
We might end up rotating some in just a little bit, just to show how that works. But when we start, we draw everything in an elevation and a butterfly as this whole thing was looking from the inside. Okay. So this is going to give us an interior elevation. We can talk about exteriors later, but for example of how this works, it's easier to understand the concept looking inside than outside. Okay. All right. So right now, let's go ahead and give this a couple dimensions just so we remember what we're dealing with. And I'm just going to go over now to my dimensions and annotation layer and use that now. Because when I'm on my dimensions and annotations layer, I can take that and turn that layer off altogether, right? And then all the dimensions will disappear at once. I could bring them all back rather than earlier where I had them on the layer that they were associated with. And that was, again, just to show you exactly that that's the window you're dimensioning. That's the door you're dimensioning, right? I matched the color. So here's our 20-foot wide wall by 10 feet high. So this is where we start to look at what other elements does this wall have? Okay, and this is how we start to look at a story pole. So the easiest thing to transfer is stuff from down here, right? So what that means is if I go back to my construction lines and I draw a line from this side of the wall all the way up, and then same thing from this side of the wall, I've now transferred the wall from my floor plan to my elevation view. And I could take that and bring this up, right? Maybe I leave this, maybe I do this. Maybe I take this line and just bring it right to the base of it, okay? And we'll leave this as construction lines. Okay, so that gives us that wall thickness now. We can come up here, change this to the interior wall layer and draw a line transfer that. So now when I turn my construction lines off, I'm not going to turn off that wall with it. Okay, but now I have a wall. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, if you drew the construction line there and then you realized after, you can select it and change it to an interior line?
You can, but I drew 2 different lines so they weren't together. So
Right.
So
Right.
yes, you totally, and exactly, you could take this construction and just click this drop down and make it interior walls, and now it's on interior wall, right? So if you did something funny, you can always change the layer that line is drawn on. Now, what you can't do is change the layer into 2 layers of the same line. So that's why I drew the
Right.
construction
Have
line
two separate lines.
and then
Right.
the interior wall line. Yes.
Okay.
Between here?
Yeah.
No, because it's still the same line segment. Unless you trimmed it unless you split it into 2 lines, you wouldn't be able to do that. It's a good thought though, because I mean, the way that AutoCAD works is it deals with intersecting lines, right? However, unless we convert that to something else, like let me just draw that down to here, that line is still always going to be from point to point, right? So even if there was something bypassing right through it, unless I told it to split that at that intersection and make it 2 lines, it's still going to behave as one, and thus will only be on 1 layer and have 1 color. Okay. Great question. That's good thinking. All right. So we transferred the wall. What else do we need to transfer? Window. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my construction line and same thing as I did before. I'm going to draw a line from the left-hand side of the window straight up and a line from the right-hand side of the window straight up. Now we're going to do something kind of fun here. And we're going to take a line This line right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave it as a construction line. Okay. On this one only. And you'll see why in a minute. But we're going to leave this as a construction line and bring it all the way to the top. Okay. Same thing with this one. So instead of just stopping at the bottom, we're going to bring those all the way up. And you'll see why in a minute. This one, we want this line, we want these lines to be all the way to the bottom of that wall at the end of the day. This window doesn't start at the bottom of the wall, okay? So we can use this and utilize some trim features to convert this and then relayer it in a little bit. So let's talk about story poles, okay? So right now what we did is just essentially transferred the X and the Y, or we're only dealing with one dimension right there, right? It's a flat plane. So we've transferred essentially the X to it. And that's given us some division from left to right along our wall. So let's go ahead and use a story pole to now give us some height along this wall. Okay, so I want to come over here, still on construction line, and I'm just going to draw a line over here. And I'm just going to draw that line 4 feet tall. Okay, 4 feet. I'm going to draw another little construction line off of here, maybe, I don't know, a foot over. And then this one I want to make 7 foot 6 inches tall. And then last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and dimension these just so I know exactly what I'm working with. So here's where the fun part comes in. So we could draw this window and we could measure up here and try to find where that 4 foot spot is, right? Or we could draw a story pole over here and draw a line. And I'm going to put it on construction again. And it's going to go straight from the left, the right, and another line at this 7 foot 6 and straight from the left to the right. And what we've effectively done is given an outline for where that window needs to live without ever measuring the height of the window, trying to give an offset on something. I knew the bottom was at 4, the top was at 7.6, and I drew a story pole and transferred that all the way across. So now what I can do.
Wait,
Yes, go ahead, Anna.
what is the distance between the 7 foot 6 inch to the 4 feet one?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, what you got now is a side elevation.
The left right here, you mean this distance from here to here?
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't matter what that is. That could be 6 inches, it could be a foot, it could be 3 feet. All you're doing here is giving a little bit of separation so you can build your second story pole. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So this dimension doesn't really matter. I made it a foot just for reference, but when you're making these, I'm just drawing straight lines to give me heights, right? To give me a height at 4 foot and a height at 7.6. This dimension here and the dimension between the top of the window and the bottom of the window no longer matter, right? Because you're just going to draw that straight across. So once we do that, we can use our cool trim command and come cut out all the stuff we don't want to see. So ultimately, we just want to leave that window there. And was this helpful on this one? Absolutely. It was only one window. We could have done it a different way. But if you had 8 windows across the back, right? Now you've transferred everything. Why won't it what? So, and I just use, again, I use my trim command with nothing selected. And then click the lines that I didn't want. So I only wanted to leave that line that's the window. Okay. Once I've got the line that's the window, I can select this, change the layer over to Windows. And now let's move this guy. Objects, just make sure your midpoint is on your object snaps. And we're just going to draw a couple little lines in here, still being on the window layer, and just kind of give this an appearance of a window. So midpoint to midpoint from the top line to the bottom line, and same midpoint to midpoint from the left line to the right line. Okay, and now we got a little 4-pane window in there. Pretty easy, and we didn't have to do a bunch of measuring to try to figure out where that corner was, right? Now that that window's there, let's come back and put our annotation and dimension layer on and throw a couple dimensions in here, right? So we would want to know the height of that window. And I don't care where that goes, right? Like as far as, you know, if that 4 foot is right here or if it's to the left-hand side, right? That doesn't necessarily matter. What does matter though, is if you drag it, if you click on the right-hand side and you drag it to the left-hand side, what happens is it brings this dimension line all the way across it, okay? Typically, we want that dimension line to be as short as possible, and not hovering or not covering other elements, okay? So if you click on the right-hand side, drag it to the right. If you click on the left-hand side, drag it to the left, okay? And you can see that if you drag it again all the way over, that white line will override that green line. And now it just looks like that dimension is just part of the window, which it's not, right? All right, next we can do a couple more dimensions. Let's do there to there. And again, maybe that one I need to bring out a little bit farther. And then at this point, do I need a dimension to the top? No, because I got this 10-foot dimension over here, right? Or I could bring that, maybe it's better suited now that that story pole is over there. Maybe it's better suited on this right-hand side. So if you do that and drag the whole thing over, you can just grab this node and reset the location. And now that dimension is on the right-hand side without the dimension lines going all the way across. All right, last but not least, let's go ahead and dimension the window from the wall, and then also the width of that. And you can utilize other dimensions and click on that arrow, and then they get the exact same snap point and line up and look really clean. All right, so that's one wall. Any questions on that?
Yes, I have a question. I could not, I was watching everything, so I think I understand.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. That was one wall, and I'm pretending that we're right here, kind of taking a look at this. Okay, it doesn't matter where that cut is, no matter what, even if we were standing here and looking this way, we're still going to see that wall. We might not see this side of the line, right? But you're still going to see that wall, and you still want to show that. And we want to look at these as a wireframe, not a hidden line necessarily, just so you can see all the elements in it.
Okay, Graham, can I
All
ask
right,
a
so let's go
question?
ahead and do one more. And this time, let's go ahead and do the bottom.
Mr. Graham,
Okay.
Mr. Thompson.
So this gets a little bit trickier. Why might this bottom get a little trickier? Exactly. You're looking at it reflected, right? So what we need to do, and this is the way that most butterflies work. Butterflies are weird in the fact that you are looking from the inside, but I don't want it to be upside down. Okay. So we're going to draw this upside down completely and then flip it around and mirror it and figure out what we need to do to make this show like we were actually looking from the inside of that room. Because if you're looking from the inside of the room, the floor is not going to be on the ceiling, right? And that's what the image portrays here. You don't have butterflies, even though they are a box that folds out, they still, all of the views still face up, right? We don't have the left-hand view facing left, the right-hand view facing right. We're going to end up reorienting those views once we draw them off of the actual building. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw the bottom one. And again, we're going to start the exact same way. And this time we're just going to build everything the same way, just upside down, right? This side has no windows on this side of the wall, right? But there is a door. So we're going to look at the door on this one instead of the windows. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm on my construction layer. I'm going to start by drawing same thing, right? I like to give myself some space. That way, when I turn this construction layer off later, yeah. I'll make current and then I'll freeze. Come on. Here and turn this off. I don't know why it's being a pain. Construction. There. So once I turn that off, now I got nice clean lines with some spacing in there. And now I can quickly do something like this if I wanted to grab that and move it, do whatever, without being right on top of my work, right? This also allows for some annotation underneath. And so I just start with 5 feet as a good example. You can always tighten it up later. But it's kind of a pain to try to make it bigger, especially if you didn't make this big enough. Like this gap here, like now you're moving multiple items to try to make some room. Okay, so let's go ahead and start here. Again, I'm going to go back to turn this construction layer on, make that current, and I'm going to start by drawing 5 feet off of here. And then I'm just going to draw to the left 5 feet again. Okay, and that just kind of sets my base point. And I can start working with my exterior wall, right? So I know, now this one's a little different because this one we had an interior wall that we were looking at, right? This one, we still have a jog in this wall, right? So we need to show that at least with some type of a line, but it's an exterior wall that has the jog. So the wall's going to be the same color, right? We're going to keep it on that same layer. So to start this, I'm going to draw a line all the way across 20 feet over. And then I'm going to come back here to my construction line and draw some construction lines to transfer the edges of all of these walls. And we'll talk about this line right here, if we all actually see it and whatnot once we get this all plotted. Okay. So, but I do like bringing all of my construction lines down to start, whether we use them or not. Okay. It's better to have it and not use it than to have to come back and draw it and have to find where the snap points are and, you know. So let's go ahead. Again, 10 feet is our assumed height. So let's change this over to exterior wall. And we're going to draw this 10 foot down. Okay. Now I could make a story pole for this, but this is the only one I'm going to do at this height, right? So I'd rather just draw it at 10 feet and 20 feet wide, and then back to this base point. All right. So we need one more line here. Which one of these lines, and I'm only going to transfer one of them because you wouldn't necessarily, this one I wanted to look at as a wireframe, right? Where we would see both sides of the wall. This side I want to look at as a hidden line, which means you're not going to see an interior portrait of that, right? You're just going to see the one line where the walls step back, right? So what line do I want to transfer over? Line A or line B?
Okay.
Outside line, so line B. This one, but we're looking from the inside. Okay, so this is the line. This is where we're going to want to transfer that down. Okay, remember it's upside down. We'll take care of it later. Okay. So we're going to, I'm cutting the plan right here in the middle. Yep. All right. So we now have our prominent edges of our wall, right? And we've got this little divider line where the wall steps back 5 feet. What else do we need? Door, right? So let's go ahead and transfer that. Okay, so construction line. And I'm just going to transfer right from the base of this door. Now this, I really only care about the opening. Okay, I don't care about the door thickness anymore. Okay, because the door is going to be closed in this view. And you wouldn't see the thickness, right? That thickness is going to be buried. I just want to transfer that actual door opening. All right, so now it's time for us to build our story pole for this one. Now, it might not be as exciting as the other ones, right? We only have a top to this door. We don't have a top, bottom of the window, and a top of the window. Again, we also only have one object, but you could do this with multiples, right? And next week, we will be doing this with multiples. We'll look at a multiple size windows, and it'll be this, but a very much stepped forward, advanced version of what we're doing tonight. Not crazy hard or anything, but just a lot more windows, a lot more doors, right? I want to get some basics on there, right? All right, so I'm going to transfer this door using a story pole. So how tall are interior doors typically? Or how tall are exterior doors? It's going to be 84 inches typically on an exterior, 80 inches on an interior, okay? So let's go ahead and draw a construction line. That's going to be my story pole at 80 inches tall. And then I can take that whole thing and transfer it all the way over with my door lines in a minute. We know that that's 80 inches just because I want to show it. I'm going to come here, grab my dimensions and annotations layer, and then dimension this. And you can see right there, it's 6'8" is that door height. Sorry, it should be 84 inches, right? It should be 84. It's an exterior door. I'm sorry. Let's make this 84 inches. Should be 7 foot tall. Come on, line. You're paying them. There we go. So that's exterior. We want a 7 foot door. So same as we did before, let's go ahead and change this over. And I'm just going to draw this on the door layer. We could draw it on construction layer and then change it to the door layer. I don't think we necessarily need to. It's pretty easy to see what we're doing. And we'll just cut out the couple things that we don't need. So I want to draw this all the way across on the door layer. And then 2 lines coming from door jamb, right? And then just like we did before, last but not least, let's go ahead, just because I want to, let's go ahead and draw a line at the bottom of this door so we get a bottom of it. So let's just draw a line from here to here being on that door layer. And now we can trim out all the other lines that we don't want. And just because I want to make this look kind of more like a door, I'm going to draw a line from this to the midpoint and then the midpoint back to here. And that kind of is a door symbol depending on what you're looking at. There's lots and lots and lots of different doors and ways to draw them. I mean, we're going to pull up some blocks later and you'll see 500 different types of doors. Okay. So it's all personal preference. I'm just trying to give you something that shows a little bit of something. So what do we need to do now? It looks pretty good. Can we, huh? I have to flip it. Okay. So you want to flip it. How would you like to flip it? Huh? This way. By rotating it, yes? Okay, because there's two ways we could look at flipping this. Okay. Option A, and here I'm just gonna I'm gonna copy this over. You don't need to do this, but I'll show you what's going on. We're gonna have two different examples over here. So option A right here is a mirrored flip. So I'm gonna use a mirror command and mirror it along this line, and that will straight up flip it. Oh. One, two. No, there we go. And I could erase that source if I wanted to. I don't care to right now. Is that going to work for us? Just being flipped like that? No, it's not, right? Because now the left-hand side, if we look at this door, how far is it from the left-hand side of this door to the wall, right? That, if I grab the dimension, is going to be roughly, 10 foot 11, right? But in this example, we only have 6 foot 1 to the door, right? So we can't just straight up mirror it over. I know it might be tempting, okay? But it actually has to be a rotational command because we are looking internal, okay? Now, if we were looking external, that's exactly what we would do, right? What we did here is this mirror version is an exterior view, okay? And that could be useful if you do an interior and exterior views and butterflies and that kind of stuff. For this, I'm only requiring this assignment to do interior, okay? So let's go ahead and utilize a rotational command. So I'm gonna just do this real quick. I'm gonna rotate it. Choose my base point and then rotate it 180. And then now, is that good? It still needs to be changed, right? So what I like to make sure I do is I like to make sure that I put a construction line in just where this bottom rotational point is. So that way, when I rotate it, I can move it back to the right location. Because when I rotate this, from this base point, it now puts that door in the right orientation, but now my wall is 20 feet shifted, right? So now I need to take that and move that back to that original location of the wall. Okay, does that make sense? So let's go ahead and try it all together. We can delete this stuff. Let's go ahead and try it right here with our current example. And I want to keep this top corner right here. So let's go ahead and draw a construction line. And I want you to draw a line at a diagonal angle. Okay, so just something like this. I don't care what the angle is. What that's going to do is it's going to make that really easy for you to know where that marker is. Okay. And then I want to select all of these lines. Okay, and I do that by going either left to right bottom or left to right top. I'm not going right to left because what right to left is going to grab every other line that touches it, not just what I'm inclusively selecting, right? So that's only inclusive. This is anything that selection touches, okay? So I'm going to grab all of this inside. I'm going to rotate it, utilizing this as my base point. We're going to rotate it 180, okay? And then I'm going to grab those same lines, and I might need to deselect these other two lines right here, and you can do that by clicking shift, by holding shift and clicking that little line. Maybe you have to grab a couple of them. Let's see, the shift adds and removes, doesn't it? So maybe you want to come here real quick and tab in, and are there construction lines there? Maybe let's turn this, let's tab into this line right here. Can you get it? Come on. Tab doesn't work the same as it does. We can grab it like this and grab this line like this. And let's take those two and delete them right now. We still have the corner where we want to move it, but now when we select everything, we're not grabbing excess lines and moving stuff all over. We can now do that. Deselect the line that I want it to be the base point, and then use our move command and move from the top left corner to our corner that we had our line at. And now we've got a elevation view from the bottom wall, or walls, I should say, that's looking from the inside. Okay, I'll do that one more time.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
absolutely. Okay, so I deleted those two lines here that we had for construction lines. That was just giving me a couple locations to start with. Sometimes you draw a line and you've already used its purpose and you can get rid of it later. Okay, those lines had served their purpose already and we're now at this point just in the way, right? Or I was going to copy them and move them and you end up or moving them over here, and I don't care to do that either. So I'm just going to select, and you can do this by selecting just this one. You could come click that line, do something like that, and click this line. And that's going to keep you from selecting that inside yellow line, which we want to use as our place of displacement. So what we're going to do is click move, use our move command after we rotated it, right? We're going to move it from this top corner to the bottom right corner of our diagonal line, which puts it back in alignment. And now when we turn off our construction lines, off construction, we now have both of our elevations, right? And the right orientation that they are. Because this view, looking from the inside here, is always going to be flipped around. It's part of the process when you're hand drawing stuff, okay? When I draw section views in Revit, we don't do this anymore. We look at it, we put it on a sheet, it auto rotates everything for us, okay? We're not drawing profiles. We're drawing floor plans, and then we're taking section cuts and actually creating this elevation based on what we modeled, okay? So it's a little different. That's how I want to operate, but knowing this and how to do these elevations in AutoCAD is a very important part of the 2D CAD world, because how else are you going to show an elevation in 2D, right? It's unfortunately, this is the way that it needs. You can't cut things like you can in Revit. It's a different program. Okay. So it's 7:32. What I'd like to do in the next 20 minutes is go ahead and put together the next two side views, and we can do them together. Okay. We'll start with, let's start with this left-hand side, and let's go ahead and turn our, I turn these off, but let's turn our construction lines back on. And now we can start taking a look at, you know, how to make this side view. So same thing we did before. Okay. And if the line's in the way right now, you've already used it, you can delete it. Okay. I'm not requiring you to keep these here. Okay. I'm leaving them just for now so I can turn them off with the layer and they all turn off together. But like this diagonal one, it was kind of getting in my way. I just deleted it. Again, it's already served its purpose to locate this wall in the right location, right? That's all it was for. All right, so let's go ahead. Same thing that we did before. We're going to start with a 5-foot gap. right? So I'm going to draw 5 feet out. And I can change over to my exterior walls and draw a line that's going to be 15 feet by 10 feet by 15 feet and back to here for my 10 feet. Now, the one thing that's a little different about the side views is instead of rotating it 180 like we did on this bottom one, we're only going to turn them 90 degrees. So this bottom line is going to be right across the bottom. The bottom line that's here is going to be right across the bottom. So everything is in the same vertical orientation. Okay. So let's get at it, right? Same thing as before. We have a window on this wall and we've got a window on the next wall. So we're going to need to utilize these same heights. Okay. I want those window height and of them. They may be different length. They may be different distances from the corners, but they are all going to be the same height. And so I'm going to go to construction lines, draw something off here, maybe 5 feet or so, just to give me a surface. And I want to draw 4 feet on one line and 7.6 on the next line. And I'm going to dimension them just to show the actual lengths. And again, this is a good example. I didn't move over to my dimension layer, but I can go ahead and just select these 2 dimensions, click this layer drop down and change them to dimensions and annotations. Once I click off of here, I'm still on the construction layer that I was on before, right? I didn't make that dimension layer current necessarily, but I just changed them to it. So we've got our story poles drawn. Let's go ahead and transfer the wall and the window over. So using our line tool, and I'm going to go to the interior walls. I'm going to transfer, actually, sorry, we're going to be on construction lines for the first part of it. I'm going to transfer that to the bottom here and transfer the other side of the wall. And then with all the rest of these, let's assume they're hidden line. So we're only going to see one line at that gap. Okay, so on this one, we're going to see this line here, which is the bottom line. And I'm going to go ahead and make this interior walls and then transfer that line all the way to the top. We now have a division of where that interior wall edge is. And now the one thing that I said this, but let's actually keep this one on both walls just because we're going to draw the window in there. And if we were standing out here, you wouldn't see that window, right? So we're going to cut through right here and that's going to actually cut that wall in half. Okay. So let's go ahead and you can either draw a new line or you can even use your little copy command and just copy it from this point up to here. One more thing is we just need to draw that window. Again, we're going to draw, and I'm just going to utilize the construction line all the way through and we can change it once we make the window. So I'm going to draw from here straight through the top. Same thing from here. And then now I'm going to come down to the story pole and drag those 2 lines across to give us our window base or our window sill and our window top. Once we have all of these, we can go ahead and trim what we don't need. And by using the trim command, it can still leave these construction lines at the edge. So if you need to grab that location again, you still have it, right? And then we'll just get rid of Couple of those, couple of these. And we can change this window to the window layer. And just like we did on the one before it, let's make it up here like a little bit of a window and draw a little 4 pane in there. And if you wanted to get really fancy, we could, we could use an offset command and we could offset the outside and make some trim on there, right? So I'm not saying you need to right now, but that's something you could do, right, for your final project, right? You're not just going to have a window without any type of edging on it, right? It might go all the way up to the drywall, and that's fine if you want to depict it like this, but if you want to put trim on it or whatever, you can do so as well, okay? But typically your exterior is always going to have some type of a trim around it, right? All right, so like before, we need to change the orientation of this one. And the rotate command is going to be our friend again. We're not going to want to try to mirror this. Mirroring it would just put us, again, if we were doing the exterior elevation, a mirror would work great and then rotate from there. Okay, but an interior, we're not going to mirror anything. We're just going to rotate this. So I like to set my base point and know where I'm going to want to copy this or move this back into, I should say. And I like to use a diagonal line. And this time I'm going to have it be the top of my diagonal line. Now, sometimes if you really don't know what you're doing, and sometimes you can make 2 diagonal lines with an arrow, and that dictates, hey, that's the real spot, right? And just so you don't get confused with the second one. Okay. Once we've got that, we can go ahead and take this whole thing, rotate. I'm going to use this top corner to rotate around, rotate it 90. And then I can grab all of it again and move it from the bottom right here to where I put my arrow markers. And then you can get rid of these lines if you want to. What is going on? Now that we've placed it in the right location. And then on both of these elevations, we should have dimensions still, right? So give us a height, give us a width of that door, give us an offset from the door to that wall. We can put those on the dimensions and a layer. Now, does this story pole make sense anymore? That we rotated this view? Not necessarily, okay? So stuff like that, if it doesn't make sense for you to have it, go ahead and select it and delete it, okay? Story poles and all these construction lines are just temporary for you to get what you need to have drawn, right? Once you've got your content, you don't necessarily need them anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and dimension this as well. And I don't really care where that, I'll tell it where that wall is. What I really care about is that window placement. A lot of the wall dimensions are probably going to be shown on your floor plans, okay? It's your elevations of your windows and your doors that you're not going to see on those floor plan views. And again, I didn't change this off construction, so I can select these couple dimensions and then just transfer them over to the dimension layer by selecting it. All right, last but not least, we got 8 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and walk through this last one. Please try and complete your assignments. And that means I want to see fully dimensioned elevations all the way around, heights, widths, depths of all walls. Not necessarily depths in this view, right? The depth is going to be shown in that floor plan view. But right now, this shows me the width of where that interior wall lives, the height and spacing and, you know, location of that window. But I don't know how big that wall is anymore, right? So I still want to see on this one a full exercise of dimensions for height and width of walls as well. And all of those should be on a dimension annotations layer. All right, last but not least, let's go ahead and do the east wall. So I'm gonna go ahead, kind of do this a little quickly just because I don't have a ton of time. We're gonna go 5 feet out. And I'll just start my story pole right here as well. So there's my base. And while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and draw my 4-foot windowsill bottom and my 7'6" windowsill top. Real quickly throw a couple dimensions on that just so I know what I'm working with when I come back and utilize these. Dimension. All right. Now I can utilize this base point to draw my wall on my exterior wall layer. 15 feet down, 10 feet in height, 15 feet back across, and then another 10 feet. We're looking at it from the inside, so I'm going to transfer this line right here, not the outside line, but this inside line. So I'm going to move to construct. Hello? Did someone have a question? Okay. So we're going to transfer the inside line. From this wall. So I'll go ahead and just transfer that all the way to here. And now I can change over to my exterior walls layer and transfer that to the wall. Go to Windows and transfer the window up to the elevation. And we can bring the story pole across. And now trim out everywhere we don't want those windows. And just because I like to keep things consistent, I'll move this back to the construction layer. All right, so far so good. Last one we rotated. We rotated it to the right. This one, we're gonna rotate it to the left. Okay, so all we wanna do is make sure that this bottom line ends up at the bottom of our drawing. Okay, so utilizing this base point, I'm gonna come in and draw my little diagonal line. And again, maybe I'll draw a double diagonal line so I know exactly where that arrowhead is. Now, when I select all of this, I can rotate with this top being the base point. Rotate it 90. and then move it back. My double arrowed. And then to complete the picture, let's go ahead and then put some dimensions back on here. And now when I turn my construction lines off, and we might be left with a few random dimensions, but I believe the way this works. Yeah. So we can turn those off. And then if you wanted to delete your dimensions from your story pool, that's fine too. And now we have, I think I got one more dimension down here to put, just the height. Now we have elevation views for all 4 of our exterior walls. Okay, and all 4 of the exterior walls elevation view is a butterfly, so it's looking from the inside. Any questions on that? I know it's kind of confusing, but it will make a lot more sense when we do it again next week. And we will utilize story polls for more than one window at a time, right? We're going to utilize that line, stretching that across to make like 8 windows or 10 windows or something instead of just utilizing it for one. I just wanted to set it up as a easy example to follow along with one, and then we can proceed forward with a bunch. All right, questions, comments, concerns. What I'd like to see turned in is something that looks like a screenshot of this. So something that looks like that. Okay. If you have your construction lines on, if you've got extra dimensions, I don't care. Okay. But that's what we're going for, is something with a plan view over here and then an exterior view here. The cool thing about having a view and having some spacing is we could actually probably utilize this middle and keep all the dimensioning here. I like to isolate it and separate it just for this assignment, right? Keep it clean so we weren't dealing with all of these. But ultimately, the final product of most of this is going to be, if I just select the, let's see. Can't do my cool tricks that I do in my other program, but we could grab all these dimensions. And I know we erased them before, but we could grab these and use a base point as a copy and bring these over to the other drawing if you wanted to. So it's kind of a pain to work with them. The nice thing about this is with these dimensions on the floor plan, you wouldn't necessarily need to have all of your width dimensions of that wall, right? You're just now focused on the height. So I'm going to copy this. And from this top point here, and just bring it over to the top point here. And there we go. So I've just brought those over, and you can see with that 5-foot spacing we gave, we now have something that I can dimension all of the drawings and still have a clean sheet. Okay, so you don't need to bring the dimensions over. I just wanted to show you that at the end of why I give you space around there. But with these dimensions on there, you could probably utilize a little less dimensioning, right? Some of these exterior, you still need elevations, but maybe where this wall is, right? I'd still like to see them, but it's not necessarily as crucial.
Hey, Graham, question?
Yes, yes.
Some of the dimensions are the same color as the elements, like for the interior walls and the doors and stuff. Is that Is that how
That's-
you would like it?
I don't care. When I copied
Okay.
this over, it maintained all the layers that it was on. Okay. You could have it like that. To be honest, I would probably have this showing. Here, I'll do this. Select. Select
Okay.
similar. And then I can change that, all of these. So I would do that with that one and then probably do this, select similar, and it'll grab all of the rest of these and put them on the dimensions
Layer. Okay.
layer.
Okay. Cool.
Select similar. There we go. And it's only selecting the similar ones that were on that exterior walls layer. But now you can see that those are all coming over. It cares about what layer it's on when you select similar. So if you do have them broken up, you do have to select different ones. But there you go. Now all of these are on. All of
Right.
these. So that's kind of what I want to see. Would be all of those dimensions to be on the same layer. So we could do this. So we could really quickly. I'll change it to doors to be my current, and then I can turn off all that dimensioning. Come on, make doors my current. Thank you. And then I'll just turn off the dimension layer, and you can just see a clean, right? So,
Mhm.
so that's
Okay.
that's the point of layers, is to be able to isolate, and you don't use them like that. Again, I was doing it by color, by window or door, just to give you that extra security that 5'5" is going to the edge of that door, right? In relation.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
typically you're just going to see all dimensions the same color, which is printed black, to be honest. These would all print. If I go to here and bring my, I don't know if I got a viewport in here. When I bring this in, I'll bring a single. Yeah, make it from there to here-ish. But you can see when those come in, those are all going to be black when they print. So let's take a screenshot of something that shows both this floor plan with dimensions and then these elevation views with dimensions, and submit that for this week's assignment. Okay. That takes care of the initial, in-class portion where we've just copied what I was doing, and then the actual elevations as well. Any questions, comments, concerns before we break for the evening? Cool. I appreciate your patience today. I know it's kind of some new stuff and a lot to go over. We did a good job of getting through those elevations today, so I'm pretty happy that we were able to make it through all of them. We've definitely had classes where I've made it through like one story pole set, and it's been painful. So I'm glad that it seemed like most people followed along pretty well. This won't be the last time we touch on this. We're going to be looking at elevations next week as well, and then we will start the last couple pieces that we need before we start looking at our final projects and putting those together. Again, nothing to be scared about with the finals. You got all the time to work on them in lab, go over them, but we'll introduce those probably at the end of next class. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn in the screenshot for tonight's module. And if you guys, so I'm noticing some people are kind of slipping on doing their homework and turning it in. It's a lot easier to keep up with it. I know that it might be, a pain. Maybe you missed the class, maybe you do it later. If you don't do it by this week and you're now 3 weeks behind, it's hard to stay up with everybody in class. Okay. So please, if you've got late assignments, missing assignments, let's try and really work this week to get in everything that you're missing so we can all be together for next week and move forward and start the final project together. Cool? Okay, so
Sounds good.
if you think you might be missing something, you can check with me, look at your grade book. Some people have submitted a couple things on the wrong assignment. I've given you a 0, so it alerts you. and then gave you a note on there as well to resubmit it on the right week. Just because I can't give you credit for the last week's work on this week, and so submit it in the right spot, please. All right. Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Thank you, Graham.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.
You want all the dimensions on that as well?
Yeah.
No, okay. 'Cause
I-
that's on there, and then just the exterior walls.
Yeah, that looks great right there, man. Rex, that's an awesome. Good job, man. Yeah, no, that looks really good.
My doors are a little bit off. because
That's fine. I get it. I know.
we're like an inch or so.
Okay. Okay. Right on. Well, let me stop this recording and figure out where the hell my Zoom is. Thank you.